Hello, everybody. My name is Cameron Krause, and along with Mark Fitzgerald, I'm a co-president of the Village Independent Democrats. Thank you for joining us today for the Downtown Democratic Forum for New York City Comptroller and Manhattan Borough President. We're excited to have everybody here today to hear from our candidates and press them as they see fit. I'd like to recognize some of the people in the clubs that helped put on this forum today, starting with Jamie and Tati from CODA. I'll let everybody say a few words after I call them out. So Tati's here.
Great. Hi, everyone. I'm Tati, the co-president of CODA, along with Jamie, who should be joining us a little bit later. Thanks, everybody, for taking the time out of your day on Sunday. And I know it's already been a pretty difficult week to hear from these candidates. And I'm looking forward to this afternoon.
Thank you. Next, we have Richard Corman from DID. Let me find you.
Hi, everybody. Yes, I'm Richard Corman, president of Downtown Independent Democrats. And I think the one thing that we could say about this last week is that it focuses our attention on how important our local elected leaders are and our communities are. And so I look forward to this event and appreciate the great turnout that we're getting.
Thanks so much, Richard. Next up, we have Jeremy Sherber from Grant Street Dems. Trying to find you, sorry. There you go.
Hey everyone, Jeremy Sherber from Grant Street Dems. Just quickly, so glad to be a part of this. Thank you guys for arranging it. And nice to see some of my neighbors and friends.
Thanks so much, Jeremy. Next, we have Patrick Kennel from New Downtown Dems.
Hi, everybody. Patrick Kennel from New Downtown Dems. I want to thank everybody for being here. I know we're especially looking forward to this. We just completed a really informative presentation session on ranked choice voting. So I'm excited to hear from each of these candidates and figure out how that plays into the choices I know that we're all going to have to make in a ranked way this year. So thanks again to the clubs who are leading today's forum. We appreciate it. Good to see everybody.
Thank you, Patrick. Thanks for the reminder about ranked choice. Next up, we have Jenny Lowe representing United Democratic Organization. Try and find you on here. Sorry, Jenny, I'm just looking for you in all the...
You found me? Hi.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's so good to see such a good turnout for this forum. Like Richard, after seeing what happened unfold in DC, we really want to focus on our local elected officials and see how they can make a difference in our everyday lives. UDO is so thrilled to join the rest of the downtown clubs hosting this forum and other forums to come. So we look forward to future collaborations with the clubs in Lower Manhattan so that we can together help build an equitable recovery for our beloved neighborhoods. So thank you everyone for joining.
Thanks so much, Jenny. And then last but not least, we have Ray Klein from VRDC, Village Reform Democratic Club.
Am I muted?
You're good. Oh, you just muted yourself by accident.
Because it said, never mind. I want to welcome everyone here along with the other clubs. This is important because this pandemic has not allowed us to work in the normal fashion in which we do. So any chance we can get to see what the candidates look like, sound like is very important. And I want to thank everyone who did all the hard work to get us here.
Thanks so much, Ray. And then I would be remiss if I didn't recognize VID's former president, David Siffert, who did a lot of legwork on behalf of VID for this forum as we were elected after most of the work on this forum had done. So really a big thank you to David from us at VID. So the format for today, we're going to be doing 5 minutes of presentation followed by 10 minutes of Q&A, give or take. We're asking that people please limit themselves to 1 minute per question. We'll try not to cut you off if it isn't necessary, but if it comes down to it, we may need to mute you or cut you off after a minute. Besides that, we're going to be recording this meeting today. I just want to make sure everybody knows that. So please just be aware that this meeting is being recorded. And then, yeah, so Mar, do you have anything you'd like to say?
I'm very excited. Let's get started if we can.
So I'm not sure if our first candidate is here yet. State Senator Brian Benjamin, are you on this call? Welcome, State Senator Benjamin.
Well, thank you, Cameron. I appreciate it.
Of course. So I don't know if you were on before, but we're going to do 5-minute presentation and then 10 minutes Q&A. And you are lucky number one.
You like me to start now?
Please, yeah.
Okay, sure. First of all, I want to thank all of you for hosting this forum. My name is State Senator Brian Benjamin. I am the senator for the 30th District, which encompasses Harlem, East Harlem, and a piece of the Upper West Side. I am running for New York City Comptroller, and I'm here to ask for your support. I believe that there is the overarching fundamental principle that I would want to guide my Comptroller candidacy and time in office is holding the mayor and the city of New York accountable for the billions of dollars that are spent on the city budget and safeguarding the over $230 billion pensions that right now the city of New York is responsible for. Starting on the pension front, $230 billion, there are 5 separate funds. Those funds all have to be managed. The chief investment officer of those funds is the comptroller. I'm the only candidate running in this race who has relevant investment management experience. I spent some years doing investment management and I'm very familiar with portfolio diversification, asset allocation, and I believe that I will keep those funds safe. Why is that important? Last year, in this past fiscal year, the comptroller, the funds are required to have a 7% return. If those returns aren't met, the city of New York has to invest other hard utilized dollars that can go towards other resources into supporting the pension fund. Last year, that was about 10% of the fund of the city budget. So if you look at a $90 billion budget, over $9 billion going towards pensions. That's an important issue and something that I like to manage. Secondly, I think the comptroller is responsible for holding the mayor and the city accountable. In regards to that, the NYPD to me needs a lot of management. I have been very, very forceful in saying that we need to reallocate money from the NYPD elsewhere, but I believe that there needs to be specific audits that are done from the comptroller's office to look at where is the money going? How is it being spent? What do we believe are the outcomes that we're trying to generate from an NYPD budget? When we talk about what the size of the NYPD budget should be, it should be steeped in the facts of what do we need it to do. That's a programmatic conversation that we need to have as a society, and that needs to govern the conversation when we talk about what the size of that budget is. And I believe, without question, part of what has to be on the table is the NYPD is a part of our public safety plan. It is not our public safety plan. Part of our public safety plan must also include investing in our communities, investing in education, investing in economic development, particularly in communities that have been under resourced for too long. And so I can talk more about that later if you want. Thirdly, I think that we have a crisis when it comes to homelessness in this city. It's gone on for far too long. I believe through economically targeted investments, the comptroller's office can play an important role in helping to build our way out of that problem. There's 2 ways I think we should do that. Number one, I think that the comptroller should look at, through the funds, purchasing distressed hotels across the city and converting them into permanent supportive housing. We can do that. I haven't experienced in that. I used to build affordable housing. I know how the finances of that works. I believe that we can make good returns for the retirees and at the same time provide this important and useful service. Next, on the affordable housing piece entirely, the city of New York has to have a strategic plan around our need. There are over 600,000 families that need affordable housing at economically challenged incomes. And we need to build our way into that. Our New York City housing plan does not do that. It includes preservation and it includes new construction. But if you look at the numbers, it'll take nearly 40 to 50 years in order to actually catch up with the demand we have today. That's not acceptable. And so I wanted to put that on the table for you to consider. I have experience to do those things. Let me just say quickly on my personal background. I was born right here in Harlem, was very active on my community board. I built affordable housing. I've done investment management in the New York State Senate. I'm chair of the Budget and Revenues Committee, which is charged with coming up with how we're going to find the revenues to deal with our present crisis. There's a number of taxes that are on the table that I'm in charge of leading the conversations to get people familiar with and understanding. So I've been doing this job of sort of educating people on economics, educating people on how do we sort of make our finances work in a way that makes sense. And I believe I can bring all of those skills from my life on the community board, from my life as a senator, and from my life in the private sector to bear on to help make things happen. We have a $70 million budget, the Comptroller's Office, over 700 staff. You have the power to audit. You have the power to register contracts, settlements, all things that I have extraordinary experience in, and I'll bring to bear on behalf of the city of New York. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Senator Benjamin. I'm going to pass this over to Mar. She's going to take over for the questions and answers.
Thank you.
Thank you. We are going to have 10 minutes for questions and answers with each candidate. Please use the raise hand feature. I see many of you already have. And we're going to call on you guys in the order in which you raise your hands. So first up is Dr. Gil Horowitz.
Am I audible?
Yeah, you're good, Gil.
Good. The current controller is running for mayor, Senator. As you no doubt know, if you were to win the election, he would be your predecessor. What do you think he was doing right in the office of controller, and what would you do different than he is doing to make the office of controller your vision? I think that completes my question. By the way, I have a college degree in economics and a master's degree in economics. And I remember when Abe Beam, the controller, became the mayor on the slogan, "He knows the buck." Evidently he didn't. Maybe you do. Thank you. That's my question.
No, thank you for that. And I think I didn't mention, I did go to attend at Brown University where I majored in public policy, and I went to Harvard Business School as well. To your question, I think a couple things he's done well. One is helping to sort of expose some of the issues that we have around minority women-owned businesses having contracts and opportunities in the city of New York. It's a very big problem. Less than 5% of the city budget, and also, quite frankly, 5% of the investments under management for the controller are going to minority women-owned businesses. There have been great sort of analysis of what those problems are, and the reports have come out. I think, and so I think that's something that's important. Also, I think he's done a very good job in terms of shareholder activism. We all believe that we should invest in fossil fuels. He has commissioned a study that is, I believe that study has been finished, just recently finished, and is going to be presented to the trustees of the 5 funds very soon to talk about how we move towards divestment from fossil fuel pension fund. And, those things I think are very important. One of the things that I would like to do is I would like to be very active, as I mentioned earlier, around 2 key fronts. The NYPD has to be held accountable. Public safety is too important. We all know how awful last year was. And part of that is because NYPD has been running amok for too long. And people think more law enforcement means more public safety. And that's not the case. We need to audit and investigate and be very clear about what we're getting for the resources that we're spending. And then secondly, as I mentioned earlier, I think we need to be very active. We have a very active approach to how we're going to get out of this homelessness crisis. And I believe $230 billion can be utilized in the right way to help move us very far along in that process. And I have a background in building affordable housing. I actually know how it works. I know where the money is in that. And I believe as comptroller, I can make the case to the trustees, because remember, the comptroller is not a sole shareholder. The comptroller has to present ideas to the 5 boards, and the 5 boards have to agree. So you need someone who actually understands what they're talking about in order to convince the trustees to go to make some of these decisions. And I will submit to you, when it comes to the fire and the police, they are very nervous when it comes to conversations around values. As some of you might be aware, the fire and the police funds did not commission the audit of, as it relates within themselves, their fossil fuels. So they're not even the conversation. It's the other 3, BRRS, as well as NYCers and the teachers. So we've got a long way to go, and I believe you need a comptroller who has the values, but then also understands the nuts and bolts of the financial analysis and financial management in order to move the ball forward.
Thank you.
Next question is going to be from, sorry, one second. Violetina Jones.
Okay, my question is, you said in terms of the homeless and hotels, I just recently read about the issue with the homeless and the hotels in terms of a particular community. And what I read was basically they had a problem with people's drug addiction and mental health. I don't know how they put it, but basically what I read, I said, this is a drug addiction and mental health problem. This is what they are complaining about in terms of the residents. So my question is, how would you deal with the drug addiction and mental health issues of the homeless population?
Sure, thank you for that question. I think obviously there's a very important role for the mayor to play here, but I do think we should be very clear in terms of where the resources are going. So many of us have heard a lot of the conversations around Thrive NYC. I can tell you many of the mental health providers in my district right here in Harlem and East Harlem who are dealing with the populations as much as anyone else all say they have not seen any of those dollars and don't understand what that was all about. That has to be audited. That has to be investigated, and we have to be clear about what outcomes are we trying to generate here with the money we're spending. I think unfortunately it's hard to have accountability around spending when there isn't sort of clear goals and outcomes that they're being measured against. And I think the comptroller's office can play a very important role in connecting those dots. And so for me, that's an important topic. I was very involved in the fight to sort of really try to protect some of the homeless individuals who were moved into the Lucerne Hotel on the Upper West Side during this pandemic. And one of the main reasons why I did that was because I believe, we keep passing the buck here. We're spending a significant amount of money in order to keep folks in temporary shelters, and some of them being kept there permanently. As far as I'm concerned, we should be making the transition to permanent housing. Not only is it better morally, but it's cheaper. But let me just say, to come back to your question, I'm sorry I went on a tangent, but to come on back to your question, we have got to sort of have a good sense of where all the mental health related dollars are being spent. But we do need a mayor working alongside a comptroller who are focused on the main issue, which is how are we going to move people from temporary shelter that they're in year after year after year into permanent housing where they can build their lives and grow. Particularly, don't forget, there are a number of people who are in homeless shelters who are working. They're full-time employees, and they just need a helping hand. And so, there's sort of like this view as if somehow all of these folks who are homeless are destitute and are, that kind of thing. There are a number of people who just need a helping hand, and we need to do that. We're one of the wealthiest cities in the world, if not the. We should not have a major homelessness crisis in this city.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next question is from Marian Rydell.
Oh, okay. Hi, how are you? Thank you for coming today.
Thank
Nice
you.
to meet you. I have a similar question. So I was just at a community board meeting about a safe haven that is slated to open on Orchard Street in a hotel, which I'm guessing is like the hotels you're talking about, hotels that are no longer doing well as hotels. So I have a couple of questions. One's
Sure.
programmatically, how does using hotels for supportive housing the same and differ from using them as safe havens? That's the first question. And then the second question is, how do they compare financially, economically?
Yeah, so first and foremost is a good question. You know, to me, one of the things that I think is relevant from the comptroller standpoint is that we have 2% of the budget that can be used, of the fund that could be used for economically targeted investments, right? And to me, there is an obvious non-expensive nexus between hotels that are already, by and large, set up in ways that can accommodate a number of individuals, particularly as we're getting out of COVID, accommodate them with space. And they have spaces that can be used for some of the supportive housing services. So there are some supportive housing operators that are interested in this conversation. Obviously, this is something that will have to be vetted and mapped out. So I want to be very clear about that. And I'm open to looking at the difference between that and safe havens, what makes most sense from a economic standpoint, from a comptroller investing standpoint, also from a city standpoint. To me, the real issue is, are we providing the necessary services to individuals that they're skilled appropriately? I mean, you know, there are some folks who just need a permanent place to stay, and there's some folks who need a lot more targeted help. And so I think there's, you know, you got to sort of parse that out. I'd have a team that would be helping us to work on that. So I don't, you know, so that's something that I think we need to investigate. But to be clear, we do need to be creative here. And I think you know, this is one of those things that we're going to have to figure out as we go, make the most practical decisions as we go. But there is, without question, given the amount of money. I mean, right now the city of New York is spending about $6,000 a month for a family to be in a temporary shelter, right? Over $3,000 for an individual. I cannot be convinced by anyone that we can't figure out a way to do that on a permanent level that's less expensive to the city, B, provides a return from a pension standpoint, and then 3, provides a better outcome to those who need the support and assistance. So that's sort of how I'm looking at this. Obviously, there's more details that would need to get vetted out in terms of what makes most sense. So I think that's something to TBD, but I do think this is the direction we need to be moving in. We need to be more activist about it. It's a public pension fund. That's not a private pension fund. Public pension funds should protect the retirees, but also have a public sort of benefit. And I think that this is the kind of topic that we use to figure that out.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're actually just about at time at 2:30. So if you have questions that have not been asked or answered, please submit them to us via email or put them in the chat, and we will forward them to the candidate and campaign, and they will follow up with you. Our next candidate is Kevin Parker, Senator Kevin Parker. Cam, can you unmute him? Bring him forward.
Good afternoon. Happy Sunday.
Hello, thank you so much for coming. There will be 5 minutes for statement and then 10 minutes for Q&A.
Perfect.
Would you like to get started?
Yes, ma'am. So one, let me just say thank you very much for giving me an opportunity to address you all today. I'm State Senator Kevin Parker. I represent the 21st District in Brooklyn. You know, I'm the majority whip in the New York State Senate, as well as the I'm the majority whip in the state Senate, as well as the chair of the Energy and Telecommunications Committee. And I'm running for city controller, and we'd love to have your endorsement. And I'm running for city controller because I think that in this time in which the city is fighting for literally the lives of its residents, as well as the livelihoods of its residents, you need somebody with experience, knowledge, and understanding of the system, but more importantly, the vision of how to lead us forward at this moment. I've spent my life working in public service, starting out working for Ruth Messenger when she was the Manhattan Borough president. Worked with Una Clark when she was a city council member in the city council. Worked for the first governor, Governor Cuomo. Worked on Hillary's first campaign. Worked for Carl McCall, but also spent some time on Wall Street at UBS, paying Weber, doing government affairs and municipal finance work before I got elected in 2002. And since I've been in the Senate, I've been on the Energy and Telecommunications Committee, either as the ranking member or the chair of the Energy and the ranking or the chair of the Energy and Telecommunications Committee. In that 18 years, I spent 18 years on the Finance Committee, over a decade on the Banking Committee, over a decade on the Insurance Committee, and really has made understanding the budget and understanding how we move this state forward and this city forward, my stock in trade. And I really just want to kind of bring that experience to the table. But I also bring to the table, I think, an experience of parents who were union workers, being a kid who went to public school my entire life, PS 193 Huddy and Midwood High School, and really just, having been on the ground and working with people in the community, and kind of knowing what people, care about. And I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done. We're not going to tax our way out of this crisis. I think that it's going to be important that we get another stimulus from the federal government. It's going to be important that we tax the ultra millionaires, but New Yorkers don't want to hand out, they want to hand up. And really we have an economy that's moved from Wall Street to Main Street. And we really have to build small businesses to create full-time jobs at a living wage with benefits, particularly because of labor market discrimination. You're not going to put back the literally millions of Blacks, Latinos, Asians, and women who've been unemployed through this crisis, no fault of their own, by simply just doing what we've always done. We have to use the pension fund in a very important way. If it doesn't make dollars, it doesn't make sense. And so we certainly have to grow the pension fund and make sure that it's stable. I think that there's no real dichotomy between that and responsible investing that reflect the values of the people of the city of New York. But we can also use that pension fund to invest in funds that invest in New York businesses. Access to capital, technical assistance of what they need. I want to use the office to, in fact, bring more small business development centers around so we can provide that technical assistance to build up businesses in our Main Street, get people back to work. That is the sure way to prosperity in the city. Day one, I want to put together an economic justice council of business leaders, labor leaders, community leaders, clergy leaders, to start helping, working together to build a way forward. I will, audit the police department for the first time and make sure that we make the police department continue to protect and serve every single New Yorker, but do so in a way that's transparent, that provides accountability, and does it with dignity and respect. And I also want to make sure that we invest in our young people. I think it's critical that we do that. And I think there's a lot of ways that will help improve the quality of life. We should not be putting some of youth employment jobs on the chopping block first. We should expand, expand youth-based, school-based athletics for our young people. And we should certainly be making sure that we have the kind of after-school programs that's actually universal. We've done universal pre-K. It's now important to do universal after school to make sure our young people are engaged, and that will decrease the amount of gang activity, which will increase the amount of crime and violence that we're seeing in our communities as well. And so I think there's lots to be done. Can't wait to not just hear your questions, but to work with you as your new city controller and hear your ideas and build the kind of coalitions and bridges that we need in order to see our city go further. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Senator Parker. The first question will come from Lynn Ellsworth. She's having trouble raising her hand on our computer, so she reached out to me.
Hey, Lynn.
Trying to find her. Sorry, you're muted. Let me unmute you right now. There you go. Oops, sorry.
Does that work now?
Yeah, you're good.
Hi. Just a comment before I jump into my question is that, I'm literally a normal middle-class person, but I live in a neighborhood that's become incredibly wealthy. I now pay $28,000 a year in property taxes.
Wow.
Can't afford it.
Yeah.
And moreover, our building is so valued that we're told we have to pay that amount up front at the beginning of the year. So people in our building are going into debt to pay their real estate taxes. Just saying, we have some ridiculously wealthy people here. I'm just not one of them. So we're at a very limit of what we can do with real estate taxes in the city. So my question really had to do with school and education. We live near Stuyvesant High School, which is gorgeous, beautiful, a most amazing facility. And, you know, I've been traveled throughout the city, and I've been in high schools in many other neighborhoods that are just inexcusably shabby and run down and have no facilities in them. And I'm like, what's with the equity and the distribution of resources among high schools in the entire system? And I wonder, does the controller have a role in highlighting those inequities and making proposals to fix them from a fiscal point of view?
Yes, absolutely. So I think that, you know, that's been 100% of the problem, right? I've been somebody who has fought from the time I've gotten to the state legislature on the issue of CFE, right? And making sure that we pay out the money around the campaign for fiscal equity, right? That some of that money is still owed. But the real problem is, you know, frankly, over the last 10 years, we have been a state that has put more money per pupil into education than any other state in the history of the United States, right? And so money is there. The problem that we have is that the city of New York, which is seen from a state perspective as one school district, right? Even though like those of us who are in the city talk about our internal school districts, from the state perspective is seen as one school district. We have a equality formula instead of an equity formula. We really need an equity formula that puts the most money into the schools that need it the most, right? And that's one of the things that I think that can be done through the city controller's office, and certainly working in concert with the mayor's office to do that kind of work. And I think that's the beginning of it. And I think that we have to continue. One of the things I've always said is that the city controller's office is really one of the only offices on kind of the city level that can't pass legislation. I really want to continue to have a strong legislative affairs office, and to continue to you know, work with, you know, my colleagues in the state level, my colleagues in the city council, with the governor, and obviously with the mayor, to pass legislation that's going to benefit the city. And I think this is one of the areas that absolutely needs to happen.
Thanks, Senator Parker.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry. I was say next up is Scott Kaplan.
Senator, could you comment on the Daily News story from 3 days ago indicating that one of your colleagues and co-candidates, Senator Benjamin, is receiving up to $50,000 in outside income as a board member of a company led by a Wall Street executive connected to the 2008 subprime mortgage crisis? Should state legislators receive outside income at all, and do you? Thank you very much.
So I don't receive outside income. I think that it's okay if state legislators receive outside income if it's, as it is now, approved through the ethics panel and JCOPE. And so there are kind of procedures and policies and entities that overlook those kind of things, and we all, you know, submit a financial disclosure form every year that is public information. And so I think that is a both a function of those entities and the voters to decide whether those things are appropriate or not.
Thank you, Senator Parker. Next up, we have Bill Ferns. Sorry, you just have to unmute yourself.
Hi. So thank you. My question has to do with, I'm not sure how familiar with it, but there's a project in our area, the East River Park. There's a big development project. There was a community, there was a proposal from the community, or with a lot of community input that a lot of people liked. About a couple years ago, the mayor threw out that proposal to replace it with like a $1.5 billion proposal that would tear up the park for 5 years. And he based it on something called the Engineering Value Report, which it just was reported a couple of days ago. That report didn't exist. So I know you're not the controller yet, but you do have some influence in Albany. Do you think you could get the legislature to intercede, or the governor, who we know likes to interfere with the mayor, to put a halt to this boondoggle and to go back to the original plan? Thank you.
Bill, that is the best question I've gotten in the entire time that I've been through this process. I promise to look into it. I have to learn a little bit more about it, but I promise that I'll get back to you, and we'll figure out how to start to address it. I think there's a lot of moving parts that relate to that, but certainly I think there's lots of probably creative ways that that not just you have, but I'm sure that my colleagues in government who represent that community have, and I certainly would want to check in with them and work collaboratively with them as we address that.
Thank you, Senator Parker. Just so you guys are aware, there's 3 more minutes. Kathy Nazari, you're next.
Thank you. Hi, Senator Parker.
Hey, Kathy.
Would you consider having your office administer the pensions of all tax-paying New Yorkers who would want your office to do that?
Absolutely. I think that would be a fantastic opportunity, particularly to build wealth over time. If it was something that we could legally do and we could develop a mechanism to do that, absolutely. My sense is that it may be something we can do if you think about something like the state controller does around the 529 plan for colleges, right? So, I mean, so yes, so let's look at it. That's a great idea.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up, we have Melissa Carty. Melissa, are you still there? Trying to get you on mute.
Yes, sorry, I was muted. Yeah, I just had a question, Senator Parker, on your plans for supporting minority-owned businesses with the pensions, and also, you know, your support for a divestiture on, you know, like fossil fuels, and how you plan to go about that.
Yeah, thank you, Melissa. That's a great question. So first, look, I think that the support that has to happen in this city for small businesses have to happen to every small business, right? Like, you know, MWBEs and traditional, you know, majority-owned businesses, right? All need the help, both financially and, you know, in terms of access to capital and access to technical assistance. So, but I think that obviously has to be some, you know, some specific attention paid to, you know, to women and minority-owned businesses, and to, you know, yeah. And then we also have to look at the MWBE program, because even in a year in which there's a budget hole, right? I don't want people to fall into the Dunkin' Donuts maneuver, right? Y'all know what that is, right? Everybody looks at the hole, nobody pays attention to the donut, right? So even in a year in which there may be a $5 billion deficit, the city of New York is still going to spend $90 billion. Over $20 billion is still going to be contracted out. We still need to make sure that Blacks, Latinos, Asians, and women get access to those contracting opportunities. And that if we're going to say we're going to pay people on 90-day terms, they get paid in 90-day terms, not on 120, because those are the kind of things that kill small businesses in general, and Black, Latino, and women-owned businesses in particular. And so that kind of work needs to happen. I also, again, we have a pension fund that's, you know, when you look at all 5 of them, it's $225 billion. Less than 2% of those businesses that are investing that money are owned by Blacks, Latinos, Asians, and women. We have to change that. Other people need to have opportunities to invest that money and bring that money into that income into the city. And we need to invest our pension money in funds that are investing in businesses that are in New York City, right? We just can't be investing all over the place. And I mean, you know, where it makes sense, great. But there's a lot of opportunity in the greatest city in the world, in the largest city in the country, to make good, sound investments. And we need to find funds that are doing that here in New York City and invest in them to do that work. As it relates to, you know, transitioning in terms of the clean energy economy, I'm the only expert in this field on that. I've spent 18 years on the Energy Committee. I'm the longest serving legislator currently serving who's been on the Energy Committee. The whole time I've been either the ranker or the chairman. I helped negotiate the CLCPA. I think that is a lot of nuance that has to happen here. So for instance, take National Grid. National Grid is a large utility-owned firm. They do a lot of gas. I know people are against carbon and against gas. I see gas as a bridge fuel. I don't think that's gonna last forever, but you can't throw away, you can't kind of have the cancel National Grid because they do gas, because National Grid is also the largest sustainable energy producer in the entire state. And so we got to look at it state by state, company by company, investment by investment, and deal with it in a nuanced way. And as we build towards this clean energy economy, right? And then simultaneously make sure that we're, again, making sure that Blacks, Latinos, Asians, and women are involved in that. And I think as an investor, we could be activists with those companies, with utilities, with those organizations that are doing this work to make sure that we're more moving in the right direction, which is consistent with the values of the people of the city of New York.
Thank you, Senator Parker.
Thank you.
I have a few questions that came from the gallery that we'll send over to your team via email.
Great. Can't wait to answer them.
Awesome.
Thanks.
Oh, sorry, I muted you. Next up, we have Assemblyman David Weprin. How are you doing today? In case you weren't on before, there's going to be 5 minutes for presentation and 10 minutes for Q&A.
Okay, great. I'm Assemblyman David Weprin. I'm running for controller because I really feel I can contribute to rebuilding New York City and to the future of New York City. Just to give you my background, I'm a son of a Cuban Jewish immigrant who came here when she was 8 years old in 1938. She'll be 91 in April, and she became a teacher, and she was active in UFT, and she actually has a teacher's pension that she's relying on, that she's been living off of to a certain extent. And she keeps asking me if I'm controller, am I going to protect that pension? And of course, the answer is yes. I also feel during this current pandemic fiscal crisis, where we have probably the worst fiscal crisis ever in the history of the state and city of New York, the 1975 fiscal crisis, the post 9/11 fiscal crisis, when I came into the city council, and the 2008 recession fiscal crisis. This is going to be worse than all of them put together. And we potentially have a $12 billion deficit in the city. And I believe my background, both in public finance as well as in the public sector, as well as the private sector, is going to be very relevant information. I chaired the finance committee of the city council from 2002 through 2009. I came in after 9/11 with a multi-billion-dollar deficit. I played a part in transferring that becoming a surplus. Then we had another multi-billion-dollar deficit after 2008 recession. We turned that around when I left the city council at the end of 2009. We had a surplus. So I'm proud of that record. I've been in the assembly since 2010. I've chaired the corrections committee for the last 4 years. And we've done a lot of correction reform in the state, very progressive legislation, and I'm proud of that record. I also have served on the Ways and Means Committee in the Assembly most of my tenure. I'd be happy to answer questions. I don't know if I'm over my 5 minutes, but I saw you looking at your watch, so.
You're only about 2 minutes. Our first question will be from Grace Price. Grace?
Hi, sorry, I wanted to ask a question of Senator Benjamin. I apologize.
Okay. We will move on to Pete Davies. Pete?
Hi, yes, thank you for joining us. This is a question about rezonings. Since subzonings and the granting of increased FAR to property owners are essentially a granting of monetary value, but ULURP has no requirement for analysis of economic basis of a city-sponsored rezoning action, what would you do to make transparent the upzoning transactions that are put forward by way of city planning land use applications? And do you support the community-based planning plan for Soho NoHo? Thank you.
Well, that's a very good question. I think we should have more transparency, no question. And I think we should be looking at the economic impact. again, when I was in the city council, I chaired the finance committee, not the land use committee, and I was not as involved in that issue. But I think it's certainly something that we should be looking at. And I think it's important to have significant community input, but even more importantly, knowing what the economics are and the economic impact. But there's no question that we need more transparency.
Thank you. Our next question is from Annie Wilson.
Hi there, thank you. I had to configure the unmute. I'm here and I'm asking about the audits and the potential of audits by the controller regarding HPD and HPD, which has many various contracts as public-private partnerships. Would you as controller be willing to audit the HPD public-private partnerships for the past 10 years? Thank you.
Absolutely. I think the audit function is underutilized by many controllers, by the current controller as well as previous controllers. Right now, every single New York City agency is audited once every 4 years. That should really be annual. And I think we need more personnel, obviously, when the budget allows it, to help in audits, because that's a very, very important function of the controller, which has been underutilized. That is a way to check on the mayor, whoever that mayor is. That is a check on city agencies. And there is so much waste in city agencies, particularly when you're dealing with outside contracting budgets. For example, the Department of Ed probably has the largest contracting budget. That money could be used for teachers and support personnel to actually provide teaching in our classrooms during normal times as well as during the pandemic. And I think we should significantly audit those billions and billions of dollars in outside contracting budget. So yes, the use that you mentioned of previous public-private partnership should also be audited, and I would certainly support that.
Thank you.
Our next question is from Joyce Holland. Joyce?
Hi, I'm sorry. Hello, Mr. Weprin. I just wanted to find out, what significance do you think the small property owners have in this city? And what would you do to support them? Thank you.
Well, I've supported small property owners. We've been, when we're doing this Recovery Act due to COVID-19, I think we have to take into consideration, and we expanded along with the protecting tenants, protecting small property owners. And I played an input in that because, it's one thing to help tenants, who are really in need, and that's very important. But at the same time, small property owners have to make their payments. They have to make their mortgage, and we don't want them to go bankrupt either. And they're an important part of the tax base of New York City. I'm less worried about these multi-billion-dollar landlords and ones that have multiple properties and large properties, either commercial or residential. I'm more concerned about the small property owner who really has to make ends meet, and we have to make sure that that they're protected as well.
Thank you. Our next question is going to be from Jan Lee. Jan?
Hi, it's nice to see you again, Assembly Member. Thank you.
Hi, Jan.
We have a question about the budget and about the power to audit from the controller. Are you comfortable with the current budget for the borough-based jails that seems to be an ever-moving target? And if you were to be controller, would you call for an audit of that moving into this next era with a new mayor and a new city budget? Would you be calling for an audit for the borough-based jail project, which is $8.5 billion? Thank you.
Well, I think we should be auditing, every agency once a year, as I mentioned with the previous question. But I certainly think there should be an audit. Right now, just knowing what I know, I would support that because I think it's important to close Rikers Island. And there are a lot of, safety issues that are occurring in Rikers Island. I actually chair the corrections committee at the state level, which also has oversight over city, local jails, and statewide local jails as well as state. So I think audits are good. It doesn't mean we're going to discover anything that's going to jeopardize anything, but at the same time, audits and transparency is always good. So the answer is yes.
Thank you. Our next question is from Jenny Lowe.
Hello, Assembly Member. Good to see you here.
Hi, Jenny, and good luck to you on your potential candidacy or future candidacy.
Thank you, thank you. With the past few candidates who have spoken, we were asking about them questions on how do they plan to help minority women-owned businesses. Having been a small business lender and lending to them, I know how difficult it is for minority women-owned businesses to first get certified and then get business, right? So one of the questions my question is really have to do with how do you help those whose primary language is not English? The city's local law 30 requires that the city agencies translate material into 10 different languages. So would you please help me understand how your comptroller will be able to help that?
Yeah, I've been a very strong advocate for language access and translating into multiple languages. I have one of the most diverse districts in my assembly district in the state, and I also had a very diverse city council district when I chaired the finance committee of the city council for 8 years. So there's no question that language access should be a major priority. It always has been, and I've had numerous pieces of legislation over the years. 60% of my constituents in the assembly, 60%, because overall in Queens, it's over 50%, but 60% of my constituents are first generation born in other countries. I have a particularly large South Asian and Asian population, probably about over 35% of my assembly district, and language access has always been an issue, and I would certainly advocate for more language translation. I've been a strong advocate for MWBE programs and access, for African American, Latino, Asian, and women-owned businesses, and having an opportunity to various contracts. I've always argued that, and will certainly continue to argue that as New York City Comptroller.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Assembly Member Weprin. We are just about at time. So I think we will move on. Cam, do you want to take over?
Sure.
Can I just say that I would love to have your endorsements or any combination of your endorsements. I think your reputation as downtown Democratic clubs are well known throughout the city, and I'd be honored to have your endorsement.
Thank you very much, Assemblyman Weprin. Next up, we're going to have Councilmember Brad Lander. Once I can find him on here. There we go. You should be unmuted now, Councilmember.
Great, I'm here. You ready for me?
Oh, yeah. So just,
Dynamite.
5-minute presentation, 10 minutes Q&A.
Super. Well, thank you so much. This is an amazing crowd of people. It's really great to have so many people here from this fantastic set of clubs, from CODA, DID, Grand Street Dems, New Downtown Dems, UDO, VID, and VRDC. It means a lot that 165 people are giving up yet another couple of hours on even one more Zoom. It really signals like a deep commitment to local democracy. Obviously, it has been quite a week, one that clearly showed some of the very worst, most horrific of American politics in that white supremacist insurrection. But it also showed some of the very best with that win in Georgia, where organizing led by Black women elected a Black preacher and a Jewish son of immigrants and point the way forward for our country. So I want to start by saying a big thank you to everyone on this call who organized to help elect Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, Reverend Warnock, and John Ossoff. Grassroots organizing made those wins possible, and they point the way forward, not just for our country, but for our city as well, to get through this crisis. So I'm excited to be here to share my vision for the Comptroller's Office in the hard and important years ahead. I've enjoyed getting to know many of you over the past 25 years. Before I entered politics, I had a 15-year career in community development and community planning, running two great nonprofit organizations, the Fifth Avenue Committee in Brooklyn and the Pratt Center for Community Development, supporting community-based planning in all 5 boroughs, saving neighborhood commercial strips, supporting environmental justice fights. And I got to work with many of you, some of the folks in CODA through the Sons of the Seward Park Urban Renewal Effort Coalition, fighting for tenants' rights and strengthening the rent laws, and really trying to build a city from the ground up, rooted in the vision and voice of communities. In the past 10 years, I've served in the City Council, where I've brought that community planning perspective and led some big fights. Just recently, after a 2-year campaign, the council passed my bill to protect fast food workers from unfair firing with just cause employment protections. That comes from work on the Fight for 15, a fair work week, paid sick days, and it's alongside work to give better worker protections to Uber and Lyft drivers, to car wash workers, and to protect freelancers from wage theft. I've written and passed legislation to create strong tenant protections, hold reckless drivers accountable, ban plastic bags, implement participatory budgeting, and strengthen our campaign finance laws. And I've been one of the leading voices in the fight for citywide comprehensive planning to replace our piecemeal and reactive approach to development with a long-term strategic vision informed by real public input and ensuring a fair distribution of growth. And in all of that work, I've fought to make government work better, both by working closely with activists and community leaders like you and taking a good hard look at the data. That's the approach we're going to need from the next comptroller if we're going to rise to the daunting challenge of securing a just and durable recovery, getting the vaccine distributed for all New Yorkers. I just came from a first-day visit to one of the 24/7 vaccine hubs in Sunset Park, helping the millions of struggling families who can't pay the rent, supporting our small businesses, and rebuilding our economy. We face a severe budget crisis that requires making hard choices, and I've made those hard choices as a member of the council. But we also know from Keynesian economics that we have to make smart city capital investments in long-term rebuilding. Out of past crises, New York's leaders pioneered investments in the subways, CUNY, Mitchell-Lama, that were the platform for equitable growth and success for over a century. We can and must do the same today, with investments in clean energy to mitigate and prepare for the climate crisis, in culture and the arts, in affordable and supportive housing, in our neighborhoods, in sustainable innovation to bring our city back to life and create hundreds of thousands of good green jobs. But all of that requires that we make government work better, because government can't deliver on any of those promises when city agencies are run poorly, when money's wasted, when results aren't clear, when projects aren't completed on time, when there's no accountability for mismanagement, and when corruption goes unchecked. And I'm running for comptroller to help our city rise to those challenges. The tools of the comptroller's office, making sure we're spending our dollars smarter, investing public pensions responsibly, auditing agencies to make them work more effectively. These tools can help us confront our biggest challenges: economic recovery, the affordable housing crisis, public safety, and especially since the comptroller is charged with taking the long-term view on our city, the climate crisis. That's why I've released detailed policy platforms on my website you can check out. And I'm really enthusiastic to have the opportunity to be here with you today to seek your support and talk about our shared future. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Brad. So our first question is from Marissa Redanti. Marissa?
Hi, Brad. I'm sorry. Here we go. Hi, Brad. It's Marissa Redanti. Nice to see you.
Great to see you, Marissa.
Hi, we up in Hell's Kitchen. I'm the district leader here. We have a lot of shelters, hotels turned shelters, and what I'm finding is that the providers are not all equal. In other words, Black Veterans for Social Justice is terrific. Acacia, not so great. I understand the mayor has control of these contracts, where usually the comptroller would be able to review these contracts, because I think these nonprofits are getting paid and not doing their job. So could you address that, please? Because it's so frustrating, because they're not doing their work. They're not providing services. They're not, and it's not fair to the residents. It's not fair to the community either.
Yeah. Marisa, it's a great point. I've worked on this a little more actually around foster care and adoption, because parents came to me, foster care adoptive parents came to me and said, there's a big difference between different agencies.
Yes.
Shouldn't there be an ability for people to know which ones are gonna fight for them, support them, help them do well? And right now you can't do that. The city obviously is collecting information on who's effective and who's not effective, on who provides good services and uses money effectively, but it doesn't share that information with the public enough. I think that's true across a lot of the areas where we contract for services. And it is a good role for the comptroller, because the audit power the comptroller has not only covers city agencies, it covers contracts as well. And that's better done systematically, where if you use data the city already has to give information on those contractors rather than have to go one at a time. But as comptroller, I would join in that effort. That's the whole point of auditing. It's the whole point of contracting, to make sure we're getting the quality services that are needed all around. The folks in those homeless shelters need them. If we're going to convert them to supportive housing, we have to do it with groups that can do that job well. And the neighborhood and the public absolutely has a right to know.
Thank you. Our next question is from Kathy Slowinski. Kathy?
Sorry, my question was for David Weprin. So.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Kathy. We will take a question from Eric Hamilton. Eric, are you with us? Okay, Lynn, you've been unmuted. Eric will do you right after.
Sure, Brad, I've been reading the legislation that I know you supported, that Corey Johnson calls Planning Together. And I noticed that high opportunity, well-resourced neighborhoods in Vicki Bean's report are referred to as neighborhoods that have high transit, good schools, good parks, and good grocery stores. And I see that in the legislation, it's the director of the new mayor's Office of Long-Term Planning will be required to prioritize population growth in areas that have high access to opportunity and low risk for displacement. So from my understanding of Bean's report, that kind of means the historic core south of 125th Street, downtown Brooklyn, the East River waterfront. Could you explain that?
Sure. Well, I guess let me do it from my... Yeah, sure. I mean, I guess let me do it from my own neighborhood's perspective, because I'm sitting here with a view out over the Gowanus Canal from where I am, and I've been working with neighbors in and around the Gowanus Canal, sort of the neighborhood in between Park Slope and Carroll Gardens, for a decade, to try to figure out a way that we can make that neighborhood more inclusive. There is opportunity there to create affordable and mixed income housing, but in a way that's grounded in neighborhood voice and vision, that preserves what makes Gowanus creative and funky, that supports arts and artisan and light manufacturing and small businesses, while we also make some room to have more neighbors in this community. So, I guess what I think is we do want a comprehensive planning process. We haven't had it. And as a result, everything that moves is proposed by a developer or proposed by a mayor who kind of feels like they're throwing darts, like a place they want to go next, and not a place that's grounded in what do we think makes sense for the city. So the idea of comprehensive planning is that you start with a set of questions. How much additional housing do we think we need? What are the areas where we actually want to grow jobs? What are the most important things to preserve about our city? How do we prepare for the climate future that we're facing? And given that set of priorities, try to make some decisions. If we think X amount of growth is needed, how do we distribute it fairly in ways that are rooted in adequate infrastructure, or invest in new infrastructure where that's going to have to be needed? So equity is going to have to be one of those principles coming through the COVID crisis. I think shines a light on when you have a city this segregated, you leave people vulnerable, and we have to have a city that's got room for everyone. And that does better at investing in all our neighborhoods. So equity is going to be a core principle, but the whole idea of comprehensive planning is to create a process that says, all right, here's the big picture things that are going on in the city. Here are the trends. The comptroller's got a special role in saying, here are the economic trends. Here's the status of the infrastructure. Here's how we need to think about the capital budget. And then let's have a dialogue across neighborhoods and try to figure out what aren't always going to be easy questions, but we can't do them worse than we're doing now with this reactive process that is developer driven without either a citywide vision that we all participate in or meaningful input for neighborhoods. And I do think a comprehensive planning process is the right way to do it. That bill is just a starting point. So if folks have feedback on it, I'd love to hear it. I'm pretty sure a comprehensive planning process is the way to move forward. Exactly how we do it and what it looks like is the dialogue we want to have.
Thank you. I might ask, if you've already asked a question of any candidate, please make room for others to have the same opportunity. And if your question is or was for a different candidate, please lower your hand. Our next question is from Eric Hamilton.
Hi, sorry, my name is Eric Dillenberger. That was a typo. I don't even know how that happened. So my question for Mr. Landers, the August 3rd, 2020 Controller's Office Executive Summary stated that due to COVID economic devastation, New York City is projected to have a budget shortfall of $543 million in 2021, $4.84 billion in 2022, and $3.59 billion in 2023, for a three-year total of approximately $8.97 billion. Coincidentally, this shortfall of $8.97 billion is about $500 million more than the projected $8.4 billion price tag allocated as necessary for the Borough Jail initiative to close Rikers Island, which you were a vocal supporter of. I'd like if you can explain how you expect to fund this initiative in the face of this deficit, while still maintaining public safety with upward spiraling murder and shooting rates in communities of color, and not cut basic city services.
Thanks for the question, Eric. Obviously, the city's fiscal future and the crisis we're facing is a day one job of the folks that are coming in next. Now, I will say you can't use capital dollars to pay operating deficits. So that would be true for any project in the capital budget. You're not allowed to take money, whether it's for the borough-based jails, or whether it's for roads, or whether it's for affordable housing, and use it to fill operating deficits to cover what we need to pay our teachers and our firefighters and our public hospital system. And I will say the situation is a little less dire. We actually just got some good information from the Independent Budget Office that property tax receipts and other revenues are up a little bit, but we face a devastating crisis. So step one was what happened this week in Georgia, because we need adequate federal relief for states and cities, and that was only going to happen with a Democratic Senate. So everybody here who made phone calls to Georgia, you not only helped save our democracy, you helped put New York City in a better position to meet its fiscal challenges, because getting state and city relief from the federal government is by far the most important thing. And now we've got a chance at it. It's not going to close the whole gap, but it will make a big difference. You know, I don't know if you talk to your public school principals, but most of them just got told they owe money because their registers are down. There's no way our schools can fill this gap. So the federal government's got to provide it. Second, I support proposals in Albany to provide for progressive revenue, closing the loophole on carried interest for hedge fund and private equity managers, or taxing billionaires, so that we could fund excluded workers. And then at the city level, we do have some hard choices to make. There are some programs that we had to cut. You know, I want to get to zero waste in our city, so I have fought hard to expand the composting program, but I supported its suspension during this crisis because it was the kind of thing we had to suspend to be able to get through our operating crisis. we are going to have at least one and probably two more budgets where we have to make hard choices on the operating budgets. We can do that without cutting essential services, but it's painful to cut things that are important, like moving towards zero waste. And then finally, on that capital budget, and we could debate what projects it should be, but if you know your Keynes, if you think about what it is that helps you get through a crisis, to create jobs, grow your economy when you're in hard times, investing in capital projects that bring a future on which you can build your economy. And at this point, it seems clear to me the climate crisis is the #1 place to look at. Massive amounts of rooftop solar, getting our city ready for the climate crisis. We can do that in a way that creates good green jobs now, that's built from the capital budget, not from the operating budget, but helps us grow an economy for the future. And that's how I think we're going to have to face the fiscal crisis in a way that not only meets our budget deficits, but helps grow a more equal and vibrant future.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Brad. We are at time. And that is going to conclude our comptroller section.